They vanished on my 13th birthday, leaving me with an empty house and a crumpled note. 15 years later, fate brought us face to face, not as family, but as rivals. I was 32, Elijah Mountain, chairman of a sprawling construction empire. My office, perched high above Monterey Bay, was a testament to power, to success. Glass walls offered a breathtaking view of the sparkling water and the bustling city below, green hills stretching into the distance. But today, on my birthday, all that luxury felt like a thin veil barely hiding a gnawing loneliness deep inside me. On my polished desk, buried beneath stacks of contracts and financial reports, lay a single birthday card. It was from Ella, my assistant, always so thoughtful with these small gestures. Happy birthday, boss. Wishing you a new year full of success and joy. Her neat handwriting, a whimsical drawing of a cake. I picked it up, a faint smile touching my lips. But then a cold, familiar wind swept in, wrapping itself tightly around my heart. This card, no matter how kind, was just a stark reminder. My birthdays had never truly been joyful. It yanked me back, violently, to the day everything changed forever. My 13th birthday, the day I was abandoned like a piece of forgotten trash. I closed my eyes, and the memories flooded back, a raging torrent. I could almost smell the damp, musty wood of our small house in Eureka, Northern California, where summer always felt humid and foggy. I was just a skinny 13-year-old boy then, messy brown hair, eyes brimming with pure, unadulterated hope. School had let out early, and I sprinted home, my heart practically bursting with excitement. Today was my birthday. I picture them waiting, my parents. A homemade chocolate cake, Mom's favorite. Gifts wrapped in bright, crinkly paper. Dad, Daniel, would clap me on the shoulder, his voice deep. Son, you're growing up. Mom, Ruth, would hug me tight, singing that familiar, sweet birthday song. That's what played on repeat in my head, all the way home, my heavy backpack bouncing, my worn-out shoes kicking up red dust on the trail. Towering pine trees lined the path, bird song echoing like the perfect soundtrack to my joy. Eureka was a tiny town, everyone knew everyone, and our wooden house sat on the outskirts, a few miles from the center. It wasn't fancy, just a simple place with a hastily tiled roof and a backyard full of weeds. But to me, it was my entire world. I burst through the door, breathless, a wide grin plastered across my face. Dad, Mom, I'm home, I yelled, my voice ringing out, but only silence answered. An unsettling quiet. No smell of baking cake, no laughter. Just the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock and the afternoon sun filtering through dusty windows. I slowly dropped my backpack, the old wooden floorboards groaning under the sudden weight. I padded into the kitchen, Mom's domain, where the old wooden table and the humming refrigerator usually lived. And then I saw it, a small, white note, scrawled hastily with a ballpoint pen, stuck to the fridge door with a heart-shaped magnet. My heart still hammered, a hopeful drumbeat. Maybe it was a joke, part of a big birthday surprise. I leaned closer, reading the words that would shatter my childhood. Elijah, we're going to a friend's house. We'll be back in a week. Eat carefully. Mom and Dad. That was it. Just those few cold, stark words. No birthday wishes. No promises of gifts. Nothing. I stood there, blinking, try to process. To a friend's house? I muttered, my voice hollow. Which friend? We didn't have close friends nearby. My parents were always working, Dad, a carpenter, Mom, at the grocery store. They'd never gone anywhere without telling me first, without making arrangements. I swung open the fridge door, a desperate flicker of hope to find a hidden cake, something. But there was nothing, just a few dry slices of bread, some expired yogurt, a withered apple. My heart began to sink, a heavy stone in my chest. They'll come back, I told myself, trying to push down the rising panic. Maybe it's a surprise trip, and they'll throw a bigger party when they return. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the cracked wooden ceiling, sleep an impossible luxury. The wind howled through the door cracks, chilling me to the bone. I thought about my birthday, about turning 13, That age where I thought I was finally grown up. Now, I felt smaller than ever. The next morning, I woke early. Made myself a glass of milk with dry bread. Walked to school just like always. I couldn't let anyone know my parents weren't home. In Eureka, people were nosy, always talking. I was terrified. If they found out, they'd call the police. They'd send me to an orphanage. Act normal. I coached myself, forcing smiles at friends in class, pretending everything was perfectly fine. The first few days crawled by, each one fueling a growing, sickening anxiety. I come home every afternoon, my eyes scanning for Dad's car. But there was only the empty yard, the neighbor's dog barking its lonely bark. I wash my clothes myself, shivering in a basin of cold water, hanging them on the line. Then I'd sit, studying under the dim yellow desk lamp, its light barely illuminating my books, while my mind screamed with questions. Where did they go? Why no phone call? Our landline stayed stubbornly silent. I tried calling a few acquaintances, but no one knew of any friends my parents had mentioned. By the third day, a gnawing fear had begun to consume me. The dry bread was gone. I rummaged through the kitchen cabinets, finding only a few cans of cold beans, some moldy crackers. My stomach growled, a constant, painful reminder, but I endured. At night, I'd curl up under my blanket, listening to every tiny sound. The rustling leaves, the distant hum of cars on the highway. They'll come back, I'd whisper to myself, tears silently tracing paths down my cheeks. I remembered Mom's bedtime stories, her voice so warm. Dad teaching me wood carving. Now all just faded, painful memories. On the fourth day, exhaustion began to set in. My teacher asked why I looked so pale. Just a slight cold, ma'am. I lied, forcing a weak smile, desperately trying to hide the growing fear, the crushing loneliness. Coming home, I'd sit by the window, staring at the darkening road, my ears straining for the sound of a car. Every time headlights flashed by, my heart leaped. It's them, but the car would always pass, leaving only darkness and deeper despair. I started imagining the worst. An accident? Had they simply forgotten me? The thought made me tremble uncontrollably. On the fifth day, I ran out of food entirely. I had to walk to the grocery store, clutching the few coins left in my pocket. Bought bread and milk. The store owner looked at me strangely. "Where are your parents?" he asked. "They're busy, sir," I stammered. Back home, I ate quickly, then sat to study, but my mind kept drifting. I wrote in an old notebook. It's been 5 days since my birthday. No one remembers. I'm so lonely. Tears blurred the ink on the page. By the 6th day, a profound despair had crept in, settling like a heavy shroud. I no longer felt excited, only pure, raw fear. I wandered through the empty house, touching my parents' things. Dad's jacket, still hanging on the hook. Mom's scarf, a faint trace of her perfume, still clinging to it. Why? I screamed inside my head. I tried calling an aunt, far away, but no one answered. That night, sleep was a fitful torment of nightmares. I saw myself abandoned in a dark forest, calling for my parents, but no one ever answered. Then, 7th day arrived. I woke with one last, desperate flicker of hope. They said they'd be back after a week, I told myself, meticulously counting the hours. I even cleaned the house, hoping they'd be surprised when they returned. But the sun set. Darkness enveloped the house. No car sounds. I sat by the fridge, staring at that note again. The hasty writing. No final punctuation, as if they were in such a rush, they couldn't bear to stay another second. At that moment, the truth hit me like a physical blow. A brutal slap across the face. They weren't on a trip. They had abandoned me. That note wasn't a promise. It was their gentlest way of vanishing from a child's life. I collapsed onto the kitchen floor, tears pouring out uncontrollably. My heart ached as if it had been ripped in two. Why? What did I do wrong? I sobbed, my cries echoing in the terrifying emptiness of the house. I was just a 13-year-old boy, utterly alone. My birthday hadn't been a joyful day. It had been the start of my own personal hell. I didn't know what the future held, only that from now on, I'd have to face the world completely alone. The days that followed blurred into a hazy fog of hunger and despair. My stomach growled incessantly, like a wild beast clawing from within. I drank tap water, trying to fill the void, but it only made me dizzier. My body weakened, visibly. My legs trembled when I stood. My mind spun with blurry images of past family meals. On the 10th day, or maybe the 11th or 12th, I wasn't sure anymore. Time had lost all meaning. I lay on the floor, staring at the cracked wooden ceiling, feeling like my entire world was collapsing. What do I do now? I whispered, my voice raw from crying. I thought about calling the police, but the fear of being sent to an orphanage held me back. In Eureka, people gossiped about places like that, cold, full of abandoned kids, no one who truly cared. I didn't want to become part of that world. Instead, I tried to convince myself, just go out, find some food. Maybe someone will help. But that thought was almost as terrifying. Going out meant admitting I was alone. It meant facing the curious stares of neighbors. In the end, hunger won. One morning, thick with fog, when the sun barely peeked through the gray clouds, I decided to leave the house. I pulled on Dad's old jacket, which swallowed my skinny frame whole, stuffed a few remaining coins into my pocket. The house door creaked open, and the cold wind from the sea rushed in, carrying a salty, bitter scent. The red dirt road leading to town now stretched endlessly, each step I took heavy, as if weighted with lead. I walked slowly, head bowed, avoiding puddles from the night's rain, desperate not to meet anyone familiar. My heart hammered with anxiety. If someone asks, what will I say? That my parents are away? Or confess everything? Eureka was a small town, winding cobblestone streets, a few scattered shops. I avoided the center, the school, the crowded cafes, for fear of running into friends or teachers. Instead, I wandered toward the outskirts, heading for the old bus station. It was on the edge of town, a dusty place, full of trucks and transient travelers. People from everywhere gathered there, refueling, grabbing quick bites before continuing their journeys. I thought, maybe there, someone would notice me. Someone might give me a leftover piece of bread. My stomach twisted in knots, and I had to stop by the roadside, squatting, trying to catch my breath. Just a bit of food, I muttered, tears welling up again. The anxiety built. What if no one helped me? What if I was chased away like a beggar? The bus station finally came into view after nearly an hour of walking. A wide, paved lot with an old gas pump, a few fast food stands, and buses parked haphazardly. The smell of gasoline, mixed with the sizzle of frying food from the nearby diner, made my stomach churn violently. I huddled in a corner, observing. Weary drivers smoking. A few families buying drinks. Hurried passengers boarding buses. I tried approaching a kind-looking man buying a sandwich, but when he turned, I panicked, backing away. What must I look like? I thought, shame washing over me. Dirty, starving. They'll think I'm a vagrant. My heart raced. I wandered around the station, a desperate, childish hope that someone would call my name. Recognize me as Daniel Mountain's son. But no one paid me any attention. Despair crashed over me again, making me slump onto the concrete steps, my head buried in my knees. At that exact moment, a silver truck pulled up to the gas pump, just a few meters away. The engine shut off abruptly. The door opened. A tall man, about 50, stepped out. He wore a brown leather jacket. His salt and pepper hair was cut short. His sharp eyes scanned the surroundings. He was Benjamin Mountain, my uncle, though I didn't know it then. He was on his way from Portland to San Francisco, a long business trip, and had stopped to refuel and stretch his legs. As he approached the pump, his gaze accidentally swept over me. The skinny boy huddled, dirty, but with a strangely familiar face. He paused, frowning, as if trying to recall something from a distant past. My heart skipped a beat as he started walking toward me. I should run, I thought, but my body was too weak to move. He stopped in front of me, his voice deep and warm, laced with concern. Hey kid, what are you doing here alone? What's your name? I looked up, my eyes red and swollen, meeting his gaze. There was something about him that didn't scare me. Maybe the gentle smile, or the way he crouched down on my level. My name is Elijah. I stammered, my voice trembling. My house is nearby, but I'm looking for food. He nodded, not pressing immediately. Instead, he pulled a chocolate bar from his pocket and held it out. Eat this. You look starving. I took it, devouring it greedily, the bittersweet taste spreading through my mouth, making fresh tears fall. He sat down beside me, unhurried. "Where's your home? Where are your parents?" he asked gently. I hesitated, but then everything poured out like a river bursting its banks. I told him about my birthday, the note on the fridge, the days I'd spent utterly alone. When I mentioned the name Mountain and that my dad's name was Daniel, he froze. His face went pale. "Daniel, my brother," he muttered, his eyes widening in shock. I didn't understand it then, but I later learned Benjamin was my dad's younger brother. They'd cut off contact years ago over a bitter dispute about our grandfather's inheritance. Grandfather had left a large piece of land in California, and my dad had fought for it, leading to deep resentment between them. Benjamin had never met me, but he recognized the family name, and those eyes, identical to my dad's. "Take me to your house," he said, his voice firm, but filled with worry. I nodded. On the way back, he asked more about my life, and I told him everything, tears still streaming. When we arrived, he stepped into the empty house, looking around, his gaze falling on the note, still stuck to the fridge. He read it, and his face darkened. With rage. "They left you," he whispered, his voice trembling. He turned to me, pulling me into a tight hug. The first embrace after so many lonely, terrifying days. "It's not your fault, Elijah. I'll take you with me." At that moment, I didn't know how to react. Suspense surged. Go with a stranger? But he wasn't a stranger. He was my uncle, and in his eyes, I saw an honesty, a sincerity that settled my fear. He briefly explained the strained relationship with my dad. "Your dad and I had a big fight over land. Haven't spoken in years. But you're innocent, and I can't leave you here alone." He called the local police to report my parents missing, but didn't let them take me away. He convinced them he was family, that he would care for me. Then he packed a few of my things, clothes, books, an old family photo, and we got into his truck. The drive from Eureka to Carmel by the Sea lasted hours, but to me, it felt like a dream. He stopped to buy food, hot sandwiches, fresh milk, fruit. I devoured it in the truck, my hunger finally sated. He told me about his life. He owned a small construction company, Mountain Construction Group. He lived in an old stone house by the sea in Carmel. "It's a peaceful place. You like it," he said, his voice warm. I sat in the passenger seat, watching the scenery pass. The pine forest slowly gave way to rugged coastlines, waves crashing white against the shore. The fear gradually faded, replaced by a fragile, tentative hope. When we arrived in Carmel, the sun had set. The old stone house appeared under the dim streetlights. It was a sturdy building with gray stone walls, a red-tiled roof, and a garden full of wildflowers. Inside, it was cozy, a crackling fireplace, the faint, comforting scent of pine wood. He led me to my own room, small but clean, with a soft bed and books on the shelves. "From now on, this is your home," he said, patting my shoulder. That was the first time I felt truly safe after those hellish, lonely days. The early years living with my uncle in Carmel by the Sea were a time of slow, steady healing. I gradually learned to adapt to a completely new life. A life of discipline and order, so vastly different from the chaos I had known in Eureka. My uncle's old stone house, nestled by the seaside, with its sturdy gray walls and garden full of wildflowers blooming under the California sun. Every morning, Uncle Benjamin would wake at dawn. He'd brew strong black coffee in an old pot, then call me up with his deep, warm voice. "Elijah, a new day has begun. Don't let time slip away." I, the skinny 13-year-old boy, was initially groggy, unfamiliar with such a routine. But gradually I got used to that rhythm. We'd have breakfast together, usually toasted bread with eggs and fresh fruit from the local market. And Uncle would always remind me, eating is to live, not living to eat. Be grateful for what you have. He taught me the first lessons in discipline through the smallest things. He gave me an old, leather-bound notebook and said, "From now on, you'll keep track of every expense in this, even a penny for candy. Write it down." I remember sitting at the wooden table, evening after evening, under the dim yellow light, my uncle patiently guiding me to list. "Today, I bought milk, $2. School supplies, $5. Total. I calculated clumsily, but he explained, money doesn't grow on trees, Elijah. It comes from labor. And labor is the foundation of self-respect. When you learn to manage money, you'll learn to manage your life. Those lessons weren't just theory. Uncle applied them in daily life. We'd go to the market together, choosing cheap but fresh vegetables, and he'd teach me how to bargain politely. Saving isn't stinginess, he'd say, his eyes twinkling. It's respecting your own sweat. From that day on, my life truly changed. Uncle Benjamin didn't give me luxuries, but he gave me real love through simple things. He taught me to cook, how to repair things around the house, how to manage my time. Every evening, we'd sit by the fireplace and he'd tell stories about the Mountain family, about the construction projects he'd built. True strength doesn't come from money, Elijah, he'd often say, his voice calm and steady. It comes from maintaining your character when no one's around. You've done it these past days. You're stronger than you think. For me, that was the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere. Uncle Benjamin wasn't my parents, but he was the one who saved me from the darkness. I grew up quickly under my uncle's love and firm discipline. At the local school, a small seaside institution with classrooms overlooking the ocean, I began to stand out. At first, I was shy, afraid of friends asking about my past. But gradually, I excelled in my studies. My classmates liked me. My teachers praised me. Elijah is the most mature boy in class, they'd say. Uncle Benjamin was so proud. Every weekend, he'd take me to the office of Mountain Construction Group, a simple wooden building smelling of concrete and fresh wood, and show me off to the staff. This is my nephew, he'd beam. The future of the company. I blush, but my heart warmed. That was the first time I felt real recognition, not for blood ties, but for my own hard work. But not everything was smooth. In that house, there was also David, my uncle's biological son, a few years older than me. David was about 17 then, tall and broad, with blonde hair and a charming smile. But his eyes were always cold when he looked at me. At first, he didn't openly hate me. It was just sidelong glances, sarcastic remarks. "Dad, why did you bring home some random kid?" he once asked Uncle, whispering, but loud enough for me to hear from the next room. Uncle Benjamin tried to explain, "This is Elijah, my real nephew, son of your brother Daniel. He needs us." But David wouldn't accept it. He'd grown up spoiled. Uncle Benjamin had explained that David's mother died early, and he'd compensated by giving him everything. Now, the attention my uncle gave me made David feel deeply threatened. His jealousy grew over the years. As I became an outstanding student, David grew increasingly distant. At school, he was the popular guy, surrounded by friends, but his grades were mediocre. Every time I brought home an excellent report card, Uncle Benjamin would smile proudly. "Elijah, you've done great." David would sit at the corner of the table, his face darkening, muttering sarcastically, "Oh, the picked-up kid is so talented." Huh? Dad forgot his own son. My heart would tighten each time, but I'd stay silent, not wanting to upset my uncle. Uncle tried to mediate. "David, you could do it too if you try." But David just smirked and dove further into his own world, partying with friends on the beach, borrowing Uncle's car for late-night outings. I'd hear the car return in the early hours, the faint smell of alcohol, and see my uncle shaking his head sadly. A dark suspense began to creep into our peaceful life. I sensed the tension in the air. Silent dinners where David ate quickly and left the table, leaving Uncle and me alone. Why does he hate me? I once asked Uncle late one night by the fireplace. He sighed. "He's afraid of losing his dad, Elijah. But I love you both." I nodded, but deep down I worried. Would David do something to drive me away? Those nights I'd lie, awake, listening to the waves crashing outside the window, wondering if this newfound happiness could truly last. Time passed. The year I turned 18, I graduated as valedictorian, earning a university scholarship. But I chose to stay in Carmel, studying construction management through online courses while working for my uncle. David, after graduating late, was forced by my uncle to work at Mountain Construction Group. "Both of you were to learn," Uncle said, hoping it would bring us closer. I started from the bottom, site assistant, humble and diligent. Every day, I'd wake early, put on my protective gear, and dive into work, measuring blueprints, supervising workers, learning to calculate costs. "You're doing well," my uncle praised, and the staff liked me for my enthusiasm. I quickly proved my ability. On a small seaside bridge project, I even suggested a way to save materials while keeping it durable, and my uncle nodded in approval. David was the complete opposite. He'd arrive late, dressed in a neat suit, doing nothing but sitting in the office, scrolling on his phone. He sank deeper into partying, spending extravagantly, new cars, designer clothes, weekend getaways with girlfriends. "I'm a boss's son. Why get dirty like the picked-up kid?" He'd smirk when he saw me covered in dirt from the site. Uncle Benjamin warned him many times. "David, labor is the foundation. Don't disappoint me." But each warning made David more resentful. He'd whisper to the staff that Elijah is just good at buttering up Dad. He's taking all the affection I deserve. I'd overhear those words vaguely, my heart aching, but I'd stay silent, focusing on my work. The suspense grew. Would David do something extreme? Once, he deliberately messed up a blueprint I was working on, causing delays, and my uncle had to intervene. Those years passed in a fragile balance. The company grew, thanks to my and my uncle's efforts. But the shadow from David loomed larger. I remember one stormy evening when David came home drunk, slamming the door, yelling, "Dad, why are you letting that kid manage everything? I'm your real son." My uncle stayed silent, but I saw him tremble. My heart raced, suspense building as I waited for the storm to pass. Would this family break apart? I didn't know, only that I had to be strong for my uncle and for myself. By the way, if you're still hooked on this roller coaster of a story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. Trust me, it gets wild. Everything changed on a chilly autumn afternoon when Uncle Benjamin returned from the hospital. His face was weary, eyes deep set, breathing labored. He sat down in the armchair by the fireplace, holding a diagnosis paper, and called me over. "Elijah," he said, his voice calm, but I could hear the tremor. "I have chronic pulmonary fibrosis." It was a vicious disease where the lungs gradually stiffened, turning every breath into a battle. The doctor said it progressed slowly, but for my uncle, who had worked tirelessly his whole life, it was like a silent storm. He weakened day by day, from initial dry coughs to needing oxygen through clear plastic tubes. He stayed home, no longer going to the Mountain Construction Group office, just sitting by the window, gazing at the sea where the waves lapped steadily like his fading heartbeat. I looked at him, my heart tightening. He had once been a strong, tall man with calloused hands from construction sites. Now he was frail, his skin pale, every step accompanied by wheezing breaths. "Don't worry, Uncle. I'll take care of you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. From that day on, I put work aside to be by his side. I meticulously noted his medication schedule, those small but crucial pills, from antibiotics to pain relievers, reminding him to take them on time. I took him to physical therapy at the local hospital, driving slowly along the winding coastal roads, the salty sea breeze blowing through the windows. He sat in the passenger seat, oxygen tube around his nose, and we'd talk about old memories. About the day he found me at the Eureka bus station. About the company's first projects. Those trips were filled with suspense. Would he suddenly tire? Would a coughing fit strike? I always kept a spare oxygen tank ready, my heart racing every time he gasped for breath. Late at night, when he finally slept, I'd breathe a sigh of relief, but then the worry would creep in again. How would he be in the morning? Life became a string of suspenseful days, where each of his breaths was a stark reminder of life's unbearable fragility. David, my brother, visited occasionally, but each time with evident impatience. He'd drive up in a shiny sports car, park in the yard, step inside in his neat suit, but his eyes always glanced at his watch. "Dad, I'm here to visit," he'd say in a fake tone, sitting down for barely 10 minutes before standing up. "I'm busy in the city. See you next time." Uncle Benjamin would look at him sadly. "Stay for dinner, David." But David always refused, citing work or parties. I'd stand in the kitchen, hearing it all, my heart aching. Did he realize Uncle was weakening day by day? Or is he just waiting for something else? Every time he saw me caring for Uncle, David would drop sarcastic remarks like needles piercing the quiet air. Once, while I was helping Uncle put on his oxygen tube, David walked in and smirked. Oh, the picked-up kid playing the dutiful son again. No matter how hard you try, you're just a side character in this family. I paused, my heart pounding, but didn't respond. He continued, his voice louder. The real heir is always the biological son, not someone picked up from a bus station. Those words cut like knives, stirring painful memories of Eureka. But I chose silence. I knew Uncle needed peace more than pointless arguments. David, that's enough, Uncle said weakly. But David just shrugged and left, leaving a heavy atmosphere behind. I turned back to Uncle, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Don't mind him, Uncle. But deep down, suspense surged. Would David's hatred explode? Would he do something to push me out of the picture for good? Winter arrived, bringing cold winds from the sea and thick fog enveloping Carmel. One early winter morning, I woke as usual, brewed coffee, and stepped into Uncle's room. He lay there, peaceful in sleep. But when I called, he didn't respond. My heart skipped a beat. I approached and touched his hand. Cold. Uncle. I screamed, my voice breaking. He had passed in his sleep, leaving a vast emptiness in the quiet house. I collapsed by the bed, tears streaming, memories flooding like a torrent. The day he saved me. Lessons by the fireplace. His proud smile at my successes. The house was now silent, only the distant waves crashing like a solemn farewell. I called the doctor. Called David, my voice trembling. Brother, David. Uncle, he's gone. He was silent for a moment, then said, I'm coming right away. Pain tore my heart, but I had to be strong. Arrange the funeral. Notify the company staff. The funeral took place by the seaside, under a gray sky, where we scattered his ashes to the wind, as he had instructed. Let me return to the sea. Then came the day of the will reading in the small lawyer's office in central Carmel, with dark wooden walls and a heavy atmosphere. I sat there next to David. He in a black suit, his face cold, but I sensed his anticipation, his suspense. The lawyer, an old man with glasses, opened the yellowed folder. According to Benjamin Mountains, will all assets, shares in Mountain Construction Group, and real estate will go to Elijah Mountain. The air froze. I was stunned. My heart raced. All of it. I'd never even thought of that. David gave an incredulous smile, as if waiting for a punchline. But then his face flushed crimson, anger spreading like wildfire. He jumped up, slamming the table with a loud crack, snatching the will from the lawyer's hands. What the hell is this? Forgery. This is forgery, he yelled, his voice shrill, his face twisted into a mask of pure fury. That Elijah manipulated Dad when he was sick. He was by Dad's side the whole time, forcing him to sign this. I sat still, not reacting, but my heart ached. Those accusations were like stabbing knives. The lawyer tried to intervene. The will was made 2 years ago when Mr. Benjamin was healthy, and it's notarized. But David didn't listen. He threw a glass, shattering it on the floor, threatening to sue the whole company. I won't let you steal everything. I'm the real son. Chaos ensued. People tried to hold him back, but David shoved them away, his eyes bloodshot, glaring directly at me. I still sat silent, the quiet between us becoming suffocating. That was the moment everything shifted. From now on, I was no longer the rescued child, but the one bearing an entire legacy, along with the unspoken curse of the Mountain family. After that will reading, David stormed out of the lawyer's office in a rage, his face flushed crimson like it was on fire. He didn't even glance at me, just bolted for the door, his expensive shoes pounding loudly on the wooden floor. I faintly heard him muttering, he stole everything from me, everything. From then on, David vanished from Mountain Construction Group. He sent a curt resignation email, no explanation, and cut off all contact with me. But I knew, deep in his heart, a poisonous hatred was boiling. David believed I had stolen everything that was rightfully his. The company, the house, Uncle Benjamin's legacy. To him, I wasn't a brother or a nephew. I was just an outsider, someone who had manipulated his way to seize it all. I sat alone in the Carmel office, gazing at the gray sea, my heart heavy. A new suspense began to creep in. What would he do? I tried to push the thought away, focusing on taking over the company. But deep down, I sensed a new shadow enveloping everything. The first weeks after Uncle Benjamin's funeral were truly difficult. I had to stabilize the company, meet with employees, sign new contracts, handle the pile of documents related to the will. Everyone at Mountain Construction looked at me with respect, but also with worry. Boss Elijah, where's David? I just smiled faintly. He needs some time, but in reality, I didn't know where David was. He had moved to Los Angeles, renting a luxurious apartment with the little savings he had left. And there, he began plotting. I didn't know anything at first. Everything happened in the shadows, like a brewing storm. David, fueled by burning jealousy, started contacting our competitors. Big construction firms on the West Coast, always eager to swallow up Mountain Construction. He'd meet them in dimly lit bars, whispering exchanges of secret project information he'd accessed while still working for us. Elijah is laundering money through the company. He'd fabricate, his voice full of venomous hatred. I have proof. Shady expenses, international transfers. Those lies spread like wildfire, like poison, making some partners hesitate to collaborate with us. I noticed the first sign when a major project, building a seaside residential area in Monterey, had its information leaked. We were preparing to bid, with a detailed plan known only to a select few. Suddenly, our main competitors submitted an almost identical proposal with slightly lower costs. How did they? I wondered, sitting in the office, my hands trembling as I held the report. Employees whispered, maybe it's a coincidence. But I felt something was terribly wrong. Suspense grew. Someone was betraying us. I strengthened security, changed system passwords, but it was already too late. David had gone further. He used his remaining money to hire hackers, those lurking in the dark web, specializing in dirty work. They breached the company's system through a small vulnerability, stealing bid files, internal emails, and then anonymously sending them to the local press. The next morning, I opened the newspaper. My heart skipped a beat, then hammered against my ribs. The headline blared, Mountain Construction suspected of money laundering. Internal info leaked. The article quoted project details, along with accusations that I was hiding illegal transactions. The phone rang off the hook. Partners calling to question. Employees panicking. The company's stock plummeting. I slumped into my chair, my mind reeling. Who did this? I muttered, clenching the newspaper. The pain from Uncle Benjamin's death still lingered, now compounded by the terrifying fear of losing everything he had entrusted to me. I hired cybersecurity experts to check, and they confirmed it. The system was hacked remotely, with traces leading to an IP address in Los Angeles. My heart pounded. David. But I didn't dare believe it. Meanwhile, David smirked in his luxurious apartment, watching the news on TV. He'll collapse, he thought, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. But his plan wasn't enough. When he saw my company still holding firm, thanks to me publicly transparentizing the books, proving all accusations false, David went mad. It's not over yet, he muttered. Moving to the next step, hiring people to tail me. From then on, my life became a series of dramatically suspenseful days. I sensed it. Strange cars parked outside the office. Shadows following me as I drove home. One evening, driving on the winding coastal road in Carmel, the strong sea wind blowing through the window, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw a black car tailing closely. My heart pounded. Who were they? I sped up, but the black car did too. Then, suddenly, it surged forward, forcing my car toward the cliff. The screech of metal colliding pierced the air. My car flipped sideways, rolling several times down the slope. I woke up in the hospital, my head throbbing, my body bruised, but luckily only minor injuries, broken ribs, and a few cuts. The doctor said, "You nearly died." I lay there, staring at the white ceiling, tears streaming down my face. Why? Who wants to kill me? The police got involved immediately, investigating the accident. They found the offending car abandoned nearby and traced the license plate. It belonged to a small transport company in Los Angeles, secretly registered under David's name through a shell company. That shock hit me like lightning. I sat in a hospital room, holding the police report, my hands shaking uncontrollably. David, my brother, the one who grew up with me under Uncle Benjamin's roof. He had staged the accident to kill me. My heart ached, not from fear, but from an overwhelming sadness. Why such hatred? I whispered. The investigation expanded quickly, revealing a series of illegal transactions. David had bribed officials for information, illegally transferred money to hackers and stalkers, all to serve as twisted revenge plot. The police raided his house in Los Angeles, that lavish apartment with expensive furnishings, and arrested him on the spot. David struggled, yelling, "I'm innocent. It's Elijah's fault." But the evidence piled up, emails, bank transfers, confessions from the arrested hacker. The trial took place in a Los Angeles courtroom, under glaring neon lights and a tense atmosphere. I flew there, sitting in the audience row, not out of resentment, just silently observing. David appeared in prisoner garb, his face gaunt, his eyes avoiding mine. The prosecutor presented the evidence, from selling information to hiring hackers, then the accident, all proving attempted murder, intentional injury, and violations of corporate finance laws. David tried to defend himself. I was robbed of my inheritance. Elijah manipulated my dad. But the judge shook his head. That's no excuse for crime. The sentence was pronounced, 20 years in prison. David collapsed, sobbing, but I just quietly left without a word. My heart was heavy. He had once been my brother, even if not by blood. But now, he was just a ghost of hatred. After the trial, I returned to Carmel, holding a press conference to reveal the full truth. Mountain Construction is clean, I said, my voice steady, presenting transparent evidence. The company's reputation was cleared. Partners returned. Projects continued. The story closed with the one harboring jealousy paying the ultimate price for his own hatred. David, sitting in prison, reflecting on his mistakes. And I, for the first time, lived truly free from the shadows of the past. The Carmel Sea still crashed its waves, and I stood there, feeling the sea breeze carry away all burdens. But freedom, no matter how sweet, was just a lull before a new storm. After David's trial, I officially took over Mountain Construction Group as chairman, the position Uncle Benjamin had trusted me to inherit. The Carmel office became my sanctuary, with glass walls overlooking the deep blue sea, where the waves lapped steadily like my now stabilized heartbeat. I began restructuring the organization immediately, not out of ambition, but to honor Uncle's legacy. The company, once shaken by David's accusations, now needed a fresh push. I fired a few dishonest employees, those David had bribed, and hired young, passionate engineers. We expanded into green infrastructure, building structures using solar energy, rainwater recycling systems, and eco-friendly urban areas. We're not just building houses, I said in the first meeting, my voice warm but firm, but also constructing a sustainable future for the next generations. The first months were so busy that I often forgot to eat. Every morning, I'd wake at dawn, brew strong black coffee like Uncle used to, and sit at the old wooden table where he often told stories of the past. I'd review financial reports, negotiate with suppliers, and lead the team. My personal life changed, too. I bought a small house by the sea, not far from the company, with a garden full of wildflowers and the soothing sound of waves. I started jogging every morning, feeling the salty sea breeze on my skin, like it was chasing away old, lingering memories. Friends, close colleagues invited me out, but I'd often decline, choosing to be alone to think. Elijah, you need to live for yourself, Ella, my assistant, once said. She was the only one who knew the whole story, and sometimes we'd sit drinking coffee, sharing reflections about the past. A year passed in a flash. That summer, the government announced a project to build an eco-urban area along the Monterey coast. A massive contract, the largest in the company's history. It was a vision, a green city with thousands of eco-friendly apartments, parks, schools, and sustainable transportation systems. The contract value reached billions of dollars, potentially deciding Mountain Construction's entire future. Win, and we'd expand nationwide. Lose, and we'd have to cut staff. The news spread quickly in the press, and my office was flooded with calls. This is a golden opportunity, I told the leadership in an emergency meeting, my voice full of excitement, but also a tremor of worry. My heart pounded. This wasn't just a project. It was a challenge to prove myself after all the upheavals. I personally led the team in the bidding process. We worked tirelessly day and night in the office with coffee and pizza as our constant companions. I drew designs, calculated costs, and met with environmental experts to ensure the green aspect was genuine. Using recycled materials, offshore wind energy, and advanced water filtration systems. We have to excel. I motivated the team, my eyes sparkling with determination. After many fierce elimination rounds, dozens of major competitors were knocked out. Giant companies from New York or Texas, with huge budgets but lacking the creativity we brought. Each round was a battle, presenting ideas, answering questions from the state committee, and waiting for results in nail-biting suspense. I remember the night before the third elimination round. I couldn't sleep, lying awake, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding. What would Uncle Benjamin think if we lost? But we advanced. And finally, only two companies remained. My Mountain Construction and a firm called Summit Design and Build. An unfamiliar name, but their profile showed strength in high-end construction. When reviewing the competitor's project profile, sent via email from the committee, I froze as if struck by lightning. I sat in the office, afternoon sunlight streaming through the window onto the screen. In a leadership list, the name Daniel Mountain, my biological father, appeared crystal clear, founder and chairman. Next to it was Ruth Mountain, my biological mother, as financial director. My heart clenched as if squeezed by an invisible hand. A flood of memories rushed back, a raging torrent. The hastily scribbled note on the fridge door in Eureka. We're going to a friend's house. We'll be back in a week. The empty wooden house, wind howling through the cracks. And me, a 13-year-old boy, huddled, waiting. The old, rain-soaked bus station where I wandered, hungry, hoping someone would recognize me. Tears welled in my eyes, not from sadness, but from a cold, simmering rage. They, my biological parents, they had abandoned me all those years ago. And now, successful, with their own company, they had never once sought me out. No calls, no letters, nothing. Do they even know I'm here? I muttered, my hand clenching the mouse. Summit Design and Build. The name sounded foreign, but now it was like a knife reopening an old, festering wound. I stood up, walked to the balcony, looking out at the glistening Monterey Bay. The sea breeze blew strongly, carrying the salty scent, but it couldn't dispel the storm raging in my heart. Why now? I asked myself, my heart racing. This project wasn't just a bidding war. It was a confrontation with a past I thought I'd buried. Daniel and Ruth. Once my parents. Now, my fiercest competitors. I imagine their faces. Dad with salt and pepper hair. Mom with a practiced, fake smile. They had built Summit from nothing after abandoning me. And now, they wanted to snatch my opportunity. Rage surged. Have they ever regretted it? But mixed in was a chilling realization. The pain of the abandoned child, now a man, facing them. I knew if I withdrew, I'd avoid the bitter confrontation. Just send an email to the committee. Mountain Construction withdraws. That would be it. No face-to-face. No memories flooding back. No pain. I sat back down, looking at the profile again, my heart pounding as I gripped the mouse. Withdrawing is easy, I thought. But if I do that, I deny everything I've strived to prove. From the abandoned boy in Eureka to the one rescued by Uncle Benjamin. Then overcoming David's twisted plot. All of it, to prove I'm worthy. Withdrawing meant admitting the past still controlled me. That I was still afraid. No, I shook my head, tears streaming. I wouldn't let them win without a fight. I decided to continue. I called a leadership meeting that very evening, in the softly lit conference room with a faint smell of coffee. Mountain Construction will see this through, I said, my voice resolute, though my heart still trembled. not for fame, but to prove the value of those who know how to build with integrity. Everyone nodded, but I saw worried eyes. Boss, the competitor is strong. I smiled. We're stronger because we have heart. From then on, we dove into preparations, refining designs, gathering environmental data, practicing presentations. Each day was a suspenseful battle. Did they know who I was? Would the past repeat itself? I lost sleep many nights, lying awake, thinking about the upcoming encounter, my heart pounding like a drum. The weeks preparing for the final presentation were the most stressful time in my life. The office of Mountain Construction Group in Carmel had now become a real battlefield. Papers piled high on desks, computer screens glowing all night, the incessant clacking of keyboards. Every morning, I'd wake up early, jogging along the beach to chase away my worries. But the sea breeze only brought the salty, bitter scent, reminding me of the days wandering lost in Eureka. Who are they to me now? I asked myself, my feet pounding hard on the wet sand. Daniel and Ruth, my biological parents. Now, powerful competitors with their summit design and build. I researched more about them, stealthily, like a thief. They had built Summit in the years after abandoning me, starting with small projects in Southern California, then expanding into an empire. Not a single mention of their son. My heart ached. Have they never even looked for me? Every time I reviewed Summit's profile, I'd pause at the names Daniel and Ruth. Memories flooding back. My father's stern face, teaching me wood carving. My mother's warm smile, telling bedtime stories. Then the note on the fridge door. The empty house. The enormous loneliness. Why? I whispered into the night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. Rage mixed with a deep fear. If I met them, could I stay calm? Would they even recognize me? Elijah Mountain, the child they left behind. The day of the final presentation arrived like a storm crashing in. I drove to the state government headquarters in Sacramento, a few hours from Carmel. The coastal highway wound along, the strong sea breeze blowing through the window, carrying the scent of pine forests and ocean. My heart pounded the whole way. Today is the day. I wore a neat black suit, hair combed, but my hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Stay calm, I whispered to myself. The headquarters was a modern glass building, the California state flag fluttering proudly outside. I parked, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The atmosphere was buzzing. Hallways full of people. Lively chatter. Reporters with cameras at the ready. Investors in elegant suits. State officials bustling about. I picked up my attendee badge, my heart pounding. Have they arrived yet? The large conference room was brightly lit with white neon lights, featuring a long, U-shaped wooden table and a massive projection screen. The seats were packed, about 100 people, from reporters to experts. Murmurs echoed. The smell of coffee and perfume mingled. I walked in, composed, but my heart felt impossibly heavy. My team sat on one side, nodding encouragement. Then I saw them, Daniel and Ruth, sitting opposite us, representing Summit design and build. My father, now about 60, with white hair, a stern face etched with deep wrinkles. My mother, still elegant, her hair neatly bunched, but her eyes were carefully averted. They didn't look at me right away, whispering to their team. My heart skipped. They know now, I thought. Reporters whispered. 2 companies with the same mountain name. Strange. I sat down, my hands slightly trembling, memories surging like wild waves. The rainy Eureka bus station. Uncle Benjamin saving me. Now, facing those who abandoned me. I felt like that 13-year-old boy again. But I pushed it away. I'm Elijah Mountain, chairman. The chairperson, a high-ranking state official, rapped his gavel. The meeting will begin. Today, we'll hear presentations from the 2 final candidates, Mountain Construction Group and Summit Design and Build. A pause. Mountain Construction's name was called first. Daniel paused slightly. I saw it clearly. He stopped whispering. His eyes widened as he looked at me, really looked at me. Ruth bowed her head, her hands clenching the documents, not daring to look directly. My heart pounded. They know. Reporters noted. 2 companies with the same mountain name. Strange. I stood up, stepped to the podium, the microphone in front of me. The lights were blinding, but I stayed calm. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady, clear. Mountain Construction Group is proud to present the Monterey Eco-Urban Project, a sustainable vision for the future. I presented professionally, each word carefully honed. I spoke about our sustainable strategy. We use 100% solar energy, rainwater recycling systems, and native greenery to reduce carbon footprint. Slides projected transparent charts, data verified by independent experts. I emphasized costs. Every expense transparent. No hidden fees. Ensuring long-term benefits for the community. And for the community, the project will create jobs for locals, build free schools and parks, in the true spirit of building not just homes, but lives. That was what Uncle Benjamin had taught me. Build with integrity, Elijah. I spoke with a stirred heart, memories of him flooding back, but I didn't show it. Reporters scribbled furiously. Investors nodded. Daniel and Ruth sat silent. He was staring at me intently. She was still with her head down. Suspense surged. What were they thinking? My part ended amidst applause. I sat down, sweat beading on my forehead, but my heart felt somewhat lighter. Then it was Summit Design and Build's turn. Daniel stood, his voice deep but confident. Summit is proud to bring a world-class project. Their presentation was impressive. Flashy slides, stunning 3D images, promising the most luxurious urban area on the West Coast. But I noticed the showiness. Unusually low-cost figures, lacking independent verification, and focused far more on profits than on community. We commit to early completion, Ruth added, her voice slightly trembling, still avoiding my gaze. Reporters asked, "Where's the sustainability data from?" They stammered, "From internal sources." My heart raced. They're exposing their weaknesses. Throughout the meeting, I stayed calm, avoiding any personal emotions. When the committee asked me why choose sustainability, I answered, because we're building for future generations, not short-term profits. Daniel looked at me, something flashing in his eyes. Recognition. Regret. I didn't know, I just focused on maintaining the composure of an adult. I faced the past with respect. Respect for myself, not for them. The meeting lasted 2 grueling hours, with relentless questions. The atmosphere tensed to the point of suffocation. Each answer was a battle. Would the committee see the difference? Would reporters dig into the Mountain family connection? Finally, the meeting ended in silence. The chairperson rapped the gavel. Thank you to both sides. Results will be announced later. Sparse applause. Everyone stood. I stepped out of that room, my legs slightly shaky, but my head held high. Reporters swarmed me. "Mr. Elijah, what's your relationship with Summit?" I smiled. Just competitors. But in my heart, I knew this wasn't just a bidding war. It was the first time I directly faced those who abandoned me. And this time, I wouldn't bow my head. The drive back to Carmel stretched endlessly. The sea breeze blowing, and I felt a true, profound freedom. No longer afraid of the past. A week later, the suspense reached its peak. The bidding results were announced at the Monterey Conference Center, a modern seaside building with a large hall and a brightly lit stage. I accepted the invitation to attend, though my heart still raced every time I thought about it. It was a major event. The media gathered, cameras flashing incessantly, big businesses from across the West Coast present, and state officials seated in the front row. I wore a simple gray suit, entering the hall with my team, Ella by my side, whispering, "Boss, we'll win." But I wasn't sure. Summit was strong, and with Daniel and Ruth leading, they might pull some tricks. The atmosphere was stifling, murmurs echoing. 2 mountain companies strange. I sat in a row reserved for candidates, my heart pounding like a drum. Opposite, Daniel and Ruth sat. He, with a stern face. She, with careful makeup but anxious eyes. They avoided looking at me, but I sensed the tension radiating between us. The ceremony began with a speech from the state governor, praising the Eco-Urban Project as the future of California. Then came the announcement. The chairperson, a middle-aged man with a booming voice, held the microphone. After careful consideration, the winning bidder is Mountain Construction Group. My company's name rang out, and the hall erupted in applause. I stood up, bowing slightly, and thanked them, my heart a complex mix of pride and emptiness. Pride because we won. The billion-dollar project that would transform Monterey, creating jobs for thousands. But emptiness because this victory wasn't just a deal. It was an answer to the past. I had defeated the very people who once abandoned me, on the very business battlefield they pursued. My heart tightened. This is for Uncle Benjamin. And for that 13-year-old boy. In the opposite row, Daniel froze. His face drained of life, as if all vitality had been sucked out of him. He sat motionless, eyes wide, staring at the stage, his hands gripping the armrests until his knuckles turned white. Ruth tried to stay composed, but her hands trembled as she clapped along with the crowd. Her gaze darted toward me, a flicker of panic, before she quickly averted her eyes. They hadn't expected it. Hadn't expected that the son they left behind at 13 in Eureka would be the one to defeat them on the global business stage. I saw the shock clearly. Daniel whispered something to his assistant, his face pale, while Ruth bit her lip, her eyes red and swollen. Reporters rushed to take photos, and I faintly heard murmurs, "Summit lost." They looked shocked. My heart raced. Would they approach me? Would there be any explanation after all these years? But there wasn't. The ceremony ended quickly. People congratulating me, handshakes, pats on the back. "Congratulations, Mr. Mountain." I smiled in response, but my eyes still glanced toward them. Daniel and Ruth left hastily, weaving through the crowd without a word. I stood there amidst the applause, but my heart was heavy. The victory was sweet, but also bitter. It stirred memories I thought I'd buried. The media quickly exploited the story. The next morning, local papers published. Two mountain companies clash. Who wins? They dug deep, interviewing former employees, and then the bomb dropped. A former Summit employee, who once worked closely with Daniel, revealed the family connection. Daniel and Ruth had a son, but they abandoned the boy at 13 to pursue their careers, he said in an interview with the Monterey Herald. The news spread like wildfire, from local papers to statewide, onto social media, with the hashtag Mountain Family Drama trending. Public outrage surged. How could they abandon their own child for money? What kind of parents are they? Articles detailed my story, from the abandoned boy in Eureka to the successful chairman, and condemned Daniel and Ruth as betrayers. Reporters call me nonstop. "Mr. Elijah, comment on your biological parents?" I declined. I'm focused on the project. The public buzzed. Though Daniel and Ruth didn't comment, their silence only fueled the fire. Some Summit partners paused collaborations, emails canceling meetings, calls declining. A few shareholders demanded clarification. We don't want to be involved in a family scandal. Summit Design and Build fell into a defensive position. Their stock plummeted on the small exchange. I followed from afar, through the press, my heart pounding. Justice was unfolding. Daniel tried to control the situation. He issued a press release. "We respect the committee's decision and congratulate our competitor. Regarding personal matters, that's a private past." But the company's image was clearly damaged. Employees quitting. Other projects delayed. Ruth was devastated. According to rumors, she avoided public appearances, while Daniel faced the collapse of the reputation and career he'd built his whole life. Daniel tried to reassure the press in an emergency meeting, but every justification became meaningless. "We did what was best at the time," he said, his voice trembling before the microphones, but the crowd jeered. "Best for whom? For your son?" Ruth didn't appear, but old photos of her circulated, her once fake smile beside Daniel, now a symbol of betrayal. I stayed silent, issuing no statements. I understood that justice had done its part. No need for another word from the one once left behind. But in my heart, the pain still lingered. Do they regret it? I sat at my desk, looking at the new project contract, but my mind wandered. This victory brought freedom, but also reopened old wounds. The days following the announcement of the bidding results saw public opinion gradually subside. But for me, it was like an undercurrent still rippling deep inside. The press shifted to praising Mountain Construction Group, the ethical company that defeated the giant, and congratulatory calls poured in nonstop. I received them with a polite smile. But every night, lying in bed in my seaside house in Carmel, I'd think about Daniel and Ruth. Their faces in the Sacramento meeting room still haunted me. My father's stunned expression, my mother's averted gaze. Do they truly hurt? I asked myself, listening to the waves crashing outside the window. That victory wasn't revenge. It was the result of hard-earned effort. But it made me realize that the past had never truly left. It had only hibernated, waiting for a chance to awaken. Our company expanded rapidly. My life now was busy but peaceful. Mornings jogging along the beach. Afternoons in meetings. Evenings reading by the fireplace. Ella, my assistant, had become a close friend. You've changed, boss. You seem freer. I smiled. Maybe so, but that freedom still felt fragile. I often thought about Daniel and Ruth, following scattered news about Summit. Their company was crumbling. Projects canceled. Mass resignations. Shareholder lawsuits. One article read, Summit Design and Build. From peak to abyss, due to family scandal. My heart tightened each time I read it. Not from glee, but from a profound sadness. They were once my parents, I whispered to myself. Suspense crept in. Will they contact me? Will there be any explanation after all these years of agonizing silence? I pushed the thought away, focusing on work. But deep down, the wound still bled. Then, one late year afternoon, when California's winter brought cold winds and thick fog enveloping Monterey, the office phone rang loudly. Ella picked up, then looked at me with a strange expression. Boss, Mr. Daniel and Mrs. Ruth Mountain request a meeting. They say it's personal. My heart skipped as if squeezed. Them, I muttered, my hand clenching the pen. Suspense surged. After all this time, after the victory, they came. Let them in, I said, my voice calm, but my mind was reeling. I stood up, looking out at Monterey Bay through the glass. The waves crashing strongly. Heavy gray clouds hanging low. What will I say? How will I feel? Memories flooded me. The note on the fridge, the empty Eureka house, the enormous loneliness. But I took a deep breath. I'm not that boy anymore. They entered the office. Daniel and Ruth. They looked much older than they had in Sacramento. Daniel, now nearly 70, with snow-white hair, slightly hunched back, wearing an old, threadbare coat. Ruth, wrinkled skin, dark circles under her eyes, and a simple long dress. They looked tired, their eyes heavy with regret. No longer the confident, ambitious entrepreneurs. Elijah, Daniel said first, his voice thin and trembling. They sat down opposite me, their hands clasped tightly, as if seeking support from each other. The office was silent, only the ticking clock and the howling wind outside. My heart raced, suspense building. What were they here for? To apologize? Or to demand something? Daniel cleared his throat, his eyes on the floor. We were here to apologize. Those words exploded, slowly, deep in my heart. Ruth continued, her voice choked with emotion. That year, we left you behind. We thought it was for the best. At the time, we were poor, no future, and we wanted to start over. But it was the biggest mistake of our lives. They recounted their story, their voices trembling with each word. After leaving me in Eureka, they moved south, starting Summit with nothing. Success came, yes, but the guilt grew. Losing reputation and career after the bidding hurts less than losing our own son, Daniel said, his eyes red and glistening. We followed you from afar, through the press, stories about Benjamin. But we were afraid you wouldn't forgive us. Ruth cried, Son, I'm so sorry. I've never forgotten you. But the shame was too great. I listened silently, without reacting, without blaming. Their words cut like knives, revisiting the deep wounds of Eureka. Memories revived, eating dry bread, hopeless waiting, the paralyzing fear of being discovered alone. Rage welled up. Why didn't you come back? Why leave me utterly alone? But I restrained myself, looking at them. Too old, broken people. I understood that some wounds don't need retaliation. Just time to heal. I've heard, I said gently, my voice steady. They looked at me, a flicker of desperate hope in their eyes. But I didn't hug them. Didn't forgive immediately. It wasn't hatred. It was the necessary distance, the emotional space I had built over years. As they stood to leave, I escorted them to the office door. The wind blew coldly in, carrying the scent of impending rain. "Take care," I said, shaking hands lightly. They looked at me, eyes glistening. "Son, if you could." But I shook my head lightly. The past is gone. They left, their figures fading down the hallway, and I closed the door, leaning against the wall. My heart ached, tears streaming, not from disdain, but the quiet, profound way I chose to close the past. That encounter was like a fleeting wind, carrying their regret, but not changing the core of who I had become. I returned to my desk, looking at the contracts, and breathed deeply. I'm free now. From then on, Daniel and Ruth withdrew from the business world. They sold Summit cheaply, dissolved the company, and moved to live discreetly in Sacramento, a small house by the river, far from the city lights. Scattered news reports indicated they donated their remaining assets to charity, supporting disadvantaged children, building shelters. One article wrote, "The mountain couple seeks redemption through philanthropy." I read it with peace in my heart. Not glee, not resentment. They were trying to make amends in their own way. As for me, Elijah, I continued leading mountain construction with renewed vitality. The company grew tremendously. The Monterey project completed early, winning international awards for sustainability. I opened the Benjamin Foundation, supporting orphans and at-risk youth with scholarships, housing, and counseling. "This is for kids like I once was," I said at the foundation's launch, my voice filled with emotion. The foundation quickly attracted donations, and I dedicated personal time visiting shelters, telling stories about Uncle Benjamin. For me, forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant stopping the past from controlling my present. I still remembered Eureka, the note, but now it was motivation, not chains. My new life was proof that kindness and integrity are the greatest legacy one can leave. I married Ella, the one who understood me best, and we had children, teaching them about honesty, about resilience. Every birthday, I'd look out at the Carmel Sea, remember Uncle, and smile. Thank you, life. The pain was still there, a faint echo, but it had made me stronger. Now, as I sit writing these lines, Elijah Mountain, look back on my journey like a long book, full of dark chapters and unexpected lights. My life isn't a fairy tale, but a real, gritty journey where every step carries harsh lessons. I want to share messages, lessons, and advice from what I've experienced, not to boast, but in the hope that someone who feels lost can find a bit of light. My past began on that 13th birthday when I was abandoned in Eureka, a boy with enormous loneliness, eating dry bread and waiting hopelessly. That was the start of hell, yes, but also the very foundation for everything that followed. Remember, the past doesn't define you. It's just the first brick you use to build your future. I once thought I was a victim, an abandoned child, but that very pain taught me to stand up. If I let the past control me, I'd forever be the boy huddled by the fridge, looking at that hastily written note. Instead, I chose to build, one day at a time, with trembling hands at first. Now, at this age, I see life like the Carmel Sea, waves crashing endlessly. But you can learn to surf them instead of letting the waves drown you. My journey was full of suspense, from loneliness to plots, from confrontation to forgiveness. But it taught me that life is worth living when you build with your heart. So I have to ask you, what would you have done in my place? How would you have confronted the people who abandoned you after all those years? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts.